Welcome all back to the new season of the Beauchamp Historical Club. I'm glad you're all here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. A little list here. Okay, right off the bat, the meeting for November's been changed from the schedule that we sent out. The town hall here had a conflict, so we had to move it to November 19th. Okay, so tonight we have Sue Greenhagen with us from, she's from, where are you? I know you're from Morrisville, but that's not really apropos to this program. From the Cemetery Association. She's going to do a program on live oaks and still more dead folks. Now, we've had 2 of her programs already. This is the 3rd one. So it's always very interesting. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Sue?
That's it? Okay.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Before I start, I'm just going to remind you that we have a newsletter that comes out, our association, twice a year. And I have some of the spring issue here. I brought copies with me. The fall issue will be coming out maybe in about a month or so. But if you're interested in some interesting stories and information about Oakwood, please help yourself to one of those newsletters. I know they're good because I write them. Okay, so lovely evening for a stroll in Oakwood Cemetery, but you don't have to do any walking because we're going to go. Well, I guess I will do it manually. Live oaks and still more dead folks. All right, let's go back to and take a look at what we're talking about. We're talking about Syracuse the cemetery was established in 1859. So here's a 1860 map of Syracuse, and that little bottom part there is what I want to show you. And there on an 1860 map already, they have Oakwood Cemetery. So, we're hitting the big time, 1860. Let's get into the cemetery because we gotta get going. We're going from Comstock Avenue, the gate over there. There's the gate. Now we're going to go down and we're going to go around here and then down here. Well, anyway, we're going to wind up over here. The chapel is over there. It's a tough walk. But also over on the west side of the cemetery is the original entrance. That arch was placed there, and that was the original entrance. And you can still see it today from Route 81. Yeah. And there's a train track that goes across there. And so that's why they needed that archway. But we're going to go in the Comstock entrance. That's over there. Now you got to follow the signs. This cemetery is 160 acres, so if you don't follow the signs, you're going to get lost. Believe me, I've been lost. Okay, so let's just go along. Okay, we're all moving along there. Now, while we're getting to where we're going to be, I've got to tell you what the rules are. No dogs, no smoking, and you can only go 3 miles per hour. They had strict rules back in the day. All right, so just around the bend, we come to the mortuary chapel. And a beautiful building. It's Onondaga limestone and Gothic style. And, it really looks not just about the same as it did back around the turn of the century. The only thing that's different, you'll notice that there's much more plantings around. The architect was Joseph Lyman Silsby, a Syracuse local lad. Built quite a reputation in Syracuse as an architect, and went on to Buffalo and opened an office there, did well. Then he went on to Chicago and opened an architectural firm. And one of his apprentices was a fellow named Frank Lloyd Wright. So there's the tower. It's about 70 feet high. The archway with the front doors right there. Now the front doors, let me show you what that's all about. You might notice that there are no doorknobs. Well, we don't want anybody coming in the front door. The building is secured, pretty much. One day we went down there and somebody had pried the top of that one side of the door, maybe about 8 inches open, and that had to be repaired. We're trying to keep people, vandals, well, I'll be blunt, vandals out. I'll show you the inside in a second. But the whole thing is very beautiful. Now over here there's a door that goes into the crypt. And it's funny when I have high school groups from West Jenny that come to Oakwood, and we go in the crypt. And the boys are in there like, oh, wow, this is so cool, And the girls are going, ew, ew. What a difference. Well, anyway, I'll show you the crypt. There it is. Actually, we're standing in the crypt, and we're looking. There are those front doors. Now, you can see that the bricks are falling off the wall, and there's graffiti. There's graffiti there. We're trying to raise money to rehabilitate the building and preserve it. And now let me show you the actual crypt. There are the cubicles. There's over 200 cubicles. Yeah, you remember back in the day, they didn't have power equipment to dig graves. They dug by hand. And in the dead of winter, you don't dig anything by hand in Syracuse. So they have the cubicles there. Okay. Let's see. Okay, moving on. We got to get going. We don't have all night. Let's keep moving. What have I got? Okay. A very beautiful cemetery. It's landscaped. It's a rural cemetery. Back in around 1847, the Rural Cemetery Act was passed. That meant you could have commercial burying grounds. Okay, it used to be it was little family plots, it was church plots. Now that could be a commercial enterprise, and they were going to make it they landscape it like a park. And believe me, around Oakwood, almost any place you look, it is a beautiful sight. Howard Daniels was the landscape gardener, they called him, who did the design of the cemetery using the drumlin hills that already existed and the trees that were already there. He did a wonderful job of shaping it and, fine-tuning it. And no matter where you stand, it's always a beautiful view. Now, I call this live oaks. Well, there's one of those live oaks. That's one heck of a tree. And there's quite a few of them on the property. However, in 1998, with that Labor Day storm, there were over 1,000 trees of different varieties lost. 1,000 trees lost. There's the stump of one of those big oak trees, and we're gradually trying to replace them. And it's a long job. I saw a video of the day after the Labor Day storm in Oakwood, and it looked like a war zone. There were it was a wind shear that came up that hill and just right over, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing. Well, anyway, enough of that. We got to get going now. We're heading right into the cemetery. The first person I want to talk about is a fellow named Samuel J. Abbott, who died in, what does it say, in 1911. Now, he had Civil War service. You can see he was a lieutenant in, the 12th New York, the 1st Onondaga Regiment. And often the veterans of the Civil War would get civil service appointments. They would be appointed to municipal offices, and he got a really nice appointment as a night watchman over in Albany at the State Library. And the State Library, it was located in that building. And, well, unfortunately, in 1911, was the Capitol fire. It was a terrible fire in that building. And well, let me show you. Words don't do it justice. I mean, that's the state capitol. And then it goes, it gets even worse. Now, in the library itself, now this is what it looked like before. And notice, a nice lamp there. And there's that lamp. But there they are shooting water. Bonnie, look at that, shooting water into books. Oh, librarians, we practically have a heart attack when we see something like that. Well, the thing is, with that fire, it was in the middle of the night, and Samuel Abbott was the watchman, and he was the only fatality in that fire. The thing is, now they're talking about his ghost being over there. They got to make a ghost story out of everything. So he's one of the ghosts of Albany, and well, that sure looks like him in that picture. But what they did over in Albany, and they didn't even let us know. They put up a plaque in the building, and honoring the life and service of Samuel J. Abbott, which is really a nice thing. But he's buried. We have him. He's ours in Oakwood, and they didn't even let us know that they were doing a plaque. I knew they were doing it, but then didn't know when, didn't get in it, and I guess the invitation's still in the mail. What are you going to do? But anyway, we're pleased that he does have that plaque over there.
Was he from Syracuse? Is that why he's there?
Yes, he was a local fella. He and his wife moved to Albany so he could take that job. His wife died in January, and then he was killed in the fire in March. So they brought the bodies back, both of them, the remains, and had a double funeral in Oakwood for the couple. All right, we're still moving right along. All right, this is a tough guy, Harrison Hoyt, from 36 to 97. I got notes on him, so I got to juggle back and forth here. He had two major murder cases. The Rancier-Sutter case and the Walker-Murray case. They're both really, really interesting. And he was the lawyer. Now, here's the thing. Helen Rancier shot Adam Suter. And there it is. It was a headline, Ghastly Murder, 1884. Now, here's Helen. And she's also in Oakwood. She's buried up there in Oakwood. So there's her dates. And the funny thing is, Police Gazette picked this story up and had pictures of both of them, and all the lurid details of it. I don't know if I can explain it to you or not. Boy, this is going to be tough. Okay, hang on now. Okay, so Adam Suter lives on Townsend, which is the blue street, and it didn't give a number, and the numbers change. But he's not living on Townsend. Now Helen lives on Wayne, which is the red, that's the red street, and the murder occurred on Green Street, so I colored it green. Okay, so what happened was, Adam Suter was a German immigrant, didn't speak hardly any English, so Helen was tutoring him in English. And I guess they kind of struck up a friendship, or at least Adam Suter thought they struck up a friendship. And he gave her a ring, and then she gave it back, and then she wanted it. There was this constant bickering, and they made a plan to meet on Green Street one evening. And this guy was married and had 5 children, by the way. And so she went to meet Adam, and she meets him on Green Street, and she has a pistol with her. Now, the thing is, somehow Adam Suter got shot and killed. All right, he's dead from the pistol shot. But and there's the Lewis is the DA, and the county courthouse, which is used to be down on Clinton Square. In fact, if you want to know where it is, okay, this building is right there. See that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's where the trial took place. So what's Harrison Hoyt going to do? This woman killed him. I mean, she had the gun. They found her shoes with mud from the area on Green Street and the whole thing. I mean, it was, should have been cut and dried. Well, first of all, he attacked Sutter's character. Okay, what a terrible person he was, picking on poor Helen Rancière. And then there was no premeditation, even though she brought a gun with her. There was no premeditation. Not there. Okay. Okay, and Sutter had threatened her. Okay, that's a good point. Sutter had been bad-mouthing and stalking Helen Rancière. Okay, so that's not in his favor. And he brought in her family, her little children, and put them right behind her, and the little kids are crying, little toddlers and whatnot, just tugging at the jury's heartstrings. And sure enough, there it is, not guilty. Rancière-Sutter murder case. It went to noon, and they found that Mrs. Rancière was not guilty. Let's see, there she is. Oh, this is the foreman of the jury, and I can't read what his name is, Roth. But he's also in Oakwood, so I imagine they have meetings and talk about this. Now, why did did you really mean to do that? Yes, well, anyway. And Helen Rancière, there she is, Helen Rancière, born in 1846. So that's her story. Now, there's an even better ghastly murder. Moses Walker stabs Patrick Murray in 1891. Now, this Moses Walker we're talking about, Moses Fleetwood Walker. Is it starting to ring a bell for anybody? Toledo, first black baseball player in the major leagues way back in the day. In fact, the '88 Syracuse Stars, there he is. There's a baseball card of his. There's the 1889 Syracuse Stars, there he is. And he was a catcher. And back then, that wasn't easy, that was hard. That's the kind of glove he used to catch. Then they got smart and put padding, but that would be how they would catch. He did not have an easy position to play, but he was very good. Now, the thing is, after he got done playing baseball, he moved to Syracuse, stayed in Syracuse, and got a job with the railroad as a mail clerk, New York Central Railroad. And he lived in Syracuse, and the thing is, there were some really bad gangs, some thugs that populated the area. I mean, these guys look pretty rough. So anyway, he's walking home from work one night. Now let me show you this. Let me see if I can remember how this goes. And he stops at a local saloon to wet his whistle. Okay, so he has a beer, whatever. He comes out, and he runs into there's three fellas, three thugs out there, and one of them is Patty Murray. And, he doesn't pay any attention to them. He kind of ignores them. They throw a rock and hit him in the head, hit him in the back of the head with a rock. And he took umbrage at that throw, and he pulled out a knife, and they got into a scuffle, and he stabbed Patty Murray, and Patty Murray died. So there we go. Here we go with a murder trial again. Okay, it's still at that courthouse. DA is Theodore Hancock. Okay, so Harrison Hoyt takes the case. Hey, you know how it's going to turn out. Now, he attacks Murray's character. Remember, he attacked Sutter. Well, he attacked Murray's character, and with good reason. He was just a little thug in the neighborhood. There was a bloody garment. Fleet Walker's shirt had blood on it from where the rock had hit him in the head. So he was, attacked first. Let's see now. He was outnumbered. There were three of them, and they were throwing the racial epithets at him. Okay, so that he brought that up. And Fleet Walker feared for his life. I mean, 3 guys, ganging up on him. And then finally, he brought Fleet Walker's family into court and put the children right behind him with the babies crying and whatnot, tugging at the heartstrings of the jury. And sure enough, James Hill, the jury foreman, Fleet Walker, a free man, they found him justifiable homicide. So good for him, good for Fleet. Now, the bummer in this story is that Fleet Walker is buried out in Ohio. We got the lawyer. I mean, he's good. Harrison Hoyt's good, but we don't have Fleet Walker. He's out in he graduated from Oberlin College back in the 18 some class of something there. Quite interesting fellow. And there's our Harrison Hoyt in Oakwood Cemetery. So I'm really proud of Harrison Hoyt and the job he did. All right, we got to keep moving. It's getting the hour. It's getting late. Oh, I got to tell you. Oh, Milton Price. He is known as the Merchant Prince of Syracuse, and he lived in a beautiful house. And I'm going to show you. There's his place, corner of Jefferson and Salina. I think they tore it down and put up Day Brothers, if I'm not mistaken. But look at and there's his carriage house where the stables and whatnot. And his store, there it is, carpets and oilcloths. That was in 1925, showing the old picture back from the 1880s. All right, so the Milton Price stories. I got a million of them, but I'll control myself here. All right, first story is the Canal Kid. Now, he had a really nice merchandise store, mercantile they would call it, and sold everything. And he was very publicity oriented. So what he would do, he would pull these tricks, I'm telling you. The Erie Canal going right through there, right through Clinton Square. He would go along and he'd grab a kid and throw him in the canal. And then he'd fish him out. And he'd tell the kid, now you go down to my store and you get a new suit of clothes and you tell all your friends what happened. So that way the word would spread, about the store, and the story would spread and the whole thing. And it's like free publicity. It doesn't get any freer than that. A saloon. Well, now Milton Price, he liked to tip the bottle a little bit, but he would ride a nice white horse. He had a beautiful white horse. He would ride a horse into a saloon and ride around and tear up the place, but he would pay the owner whatever the cost was to repair it. And then all the patrons, he'd tell them, now come on down to Milton Price's store. We have the best merchandise in town. And of course they're paying attention to him because he's on a horse in the saloon. Hard to miss. Another one of his advertising schemes. Let's see. Oh yeah, he would also ride a horse and wagon into his own store. I can imagine some lady, with the merchandise, and all of a sudden this horse and wagon comes blowing in. But that was his style. No shortcuts for him. Let's see. Horse and hat. He would be riding along on this nice white horse, and he'd see a gentleman with a nice top hat. He would take his cane and bop that top hat and knock it right down and break it. Well, sir, come on down to Milton Price's store and we'll get you the best hat in town. And of course, the fella would come to the store. He would tell all his friends that, he's getting a free hat from Milton Price, yada, yada, yada. And again, free publicity. Let's see. Oh, gone to Europe. Okay. Milton Price was going to take a liner, one of the ocean liners, and go to Europe to buy Oriental rugs and that kind of merchandise. And he got on the ship, and he happened to see a couple of his friends from Syracuse. One was Salem Hyde. The Salem Hyde School was named for Salem Hyde, who's also in the cemetery, and another fella. So he had these 2 friends on board the ship. Milton Price drank so much that he was just totally hungover, inebriated, sick by the time he got to Europe, that he couldn't get off the ship. So he tells Salem Hyde and his friend, he gives them some money and says, you know, go and get me some Oriental rugs and whatnot. Oh, I feel terrible. So his friends go and get these items, and you know, so there are the two friends, Charlie Snow and Salem Hyde, and then they got those things for him. They bring them back to Syracuse, and he puts a big ad in the paper, Oriental rugs, you know, right from Europe, you know, like he went and got them, you know, but yeah, there was a little bit of a story behind that. So, and he must have been on the ball with his advertising, because here we are still talking about him today. You know, stop and think, still talking about Milton Price. His headstone, the family headstone, is quite ornate. You can see it's a very unusual style. And isn't he a dapper gentleman? Check out those sideburns, aren't they something else? Now, the other side of the monument, again, very, very unusual. And he and his wife, they had one child. His wife predeceased him. And their son, Willie, he was only like 6 years old when there's dear Willie, and a reclining child with a dog laying next to him. That's the headstone next to that large monument. So that's the Milton Price story. What a character. All right, we got to keep moving here. All right, let's see. Okay. Oh, Charles Brannock. You guys know about Charles Brannock, because we've all been to a store and had our foot measured, and that's what it is. It's a Brannock device developed by Charles Brannock, and let's see. They had the Park Brannock shoe store, I think with his father, which was established in 1906, and just 9 days after they opened, you know, they're selling shoes. Let me see if I can see a price on any of these. The Nettleton shoes, they're selling those. Yeah, I can't make out any prices, but they're really reasonable compared to today. Now, he graduated from Central High in Syracuse, and he also went to Syracuse University, and I think that's the dorm where he stayed. Now, his roommate was a name that we know, Roy Simmons Sr. of lacrosse fame. And Roy Simmons related how Charles Brannock would wake up in the middle of the night and grab a pencil and paper and write notes and whatnot, and then he'd go back to sleep. And then a couple hours later, he'd wake up and finish that note and whatnot. So Simmons didn't get a whole good night's sleep ever with Brannock around. And these are examples of some of his notes from that time. And this is the actual patent that he applied for and received. Now, before the Brannock device, you know, what did we use? We used some old Ritz stick. I think there's some places that still use that. But even before that, I don't know if any of you remember the X-ray fitting. Oh, yeah. Remember that? They didn't realize what that was going to do to your bones and body. But, you know, they would put children on it. Oh, my gosh. And then they would left and right, and then they'd show the foot in there. Holy mackerel. And even Dr. Scholl, shoe-fitting experts, they'll be in the store on the 15th. Oh, my gosh. But then, you know, it got to be the Brannock device. This is a magazine ad for shoes showing a very nice lady right there. So at 427 South Salina Street, circa 1940, there is Brannock Shoes. And now, that was around 1940. 1941, the war broke out. Charles Brannock was hired by the Army to measure soldiers' feet to get boots onto these soldiers that would actually fit. So he was working very hard doing that, but after the war he came back to Syracuse, And, you know, there's pictures. There's Charles and his father, Otis, a workman in the shop. And they were going pretty good. Oh, yeah, there's a Rocket Red for $8.95. And there's another nice shoe for $8.95 at Park Brannock. Okay. Yeah, and there's a postcard of it. Yeah, trying to fill these shoes. That was an article that was in a newspaper, you know, a recent newspaper, all about the Brannock device. However, 1980, the store was going out of business, the removal sale and auction of Park Brannock shoe store fixtures, you know, June 24th, 1980. So Charles Brannock passed away and is buried in Oakwood Cemetery. Now, just a little side thing about these Brannock devices. They are accurate. My niece, just this weekend, went to a mall up in Utica to get shoes. And she goes in, and they have a Brannock device. You know, surprisingly, they do. And they measure her foot, and they say, well, you know, you're a size 9. She's tall like I am, so big feet. Size 9. Okay, so they bring out shoes and bring out... She wound up buying a pair of shoes that were size 11. So she came home and, you know, she's crabbing, you know, that said size 9, but I had to get a size, you know, 11. What's up with... I said, where were those shoes made? Vietnam.
Yeah.
There are different sizes. Definitely, those people are different sizes than any of us. So believe the Brannock device and don't believe anything made in Vietnam. All right, hey, we got to keep going. We got to keep going here, getting behind schedule. All right, Florence Elizabeth Smith Knapp. Now, here's an interesting person. She started out as a teacher. She taught at Fairmount, and that was about 1909. And 1912, she became a district superintendent, District 5. In 1913, she married Philip Schuyler Knapp, who died the end of 1913. So she obviously inherited whatever money he had, which was considerable. And in 1918, she was named director of the School of Home Ec, when they had one at Syracuse. And she became active in Republican politics. Okay, so 1920, you know, the year the 19th Amendment was passed, she urged women to get out and vote. Okay, and in 1924, she herself entered the political arena, and there she is as a candidate for Secretary of State in New York State. That's Theodore Roosevelt Jr. running for governor, and of course he lost. And however, Florence won her election. She won, and she wasn't the first woman to run for statewide office. This is 1924. Harriet May Mills. That should be a familiar name in Syracuse. Her house is over on West Jenny. And the Women's Building at the State Fair is named for Harriet May Mills. She was the first woman to run on a statewide office in 1920, the year we got the vote. She didn't win, but still, you know, she's right there. She was the first to run. So what's happening with, oh yes, okay, so she's running for Secretary of State. A button that says scrap for Knapp. That was a good one. Okay, now, you know, it was in the newspaper and stuff that, you know, Mrs. Knapp's election, yep, she was probably going to win. And what she got to do as Secretary of State in 1925 was preside over the inauguration of the governor, who was Alfred E. Smith. Now, this is a tough picture. There's the whole venue. Now, here's where the governor and she, I believe she is that little white dot there. She has a white hat on, and she is going to do the, let's see, do I have a better picture? Yeah, I don't know. That's her there anyway. She takes the oath as secretary in order to administer the oath to the governor. So she's making quite a name for herself. And there she is. Picture in the paper all the time. Now, one of the jobs in New York State on the fives was to do a census, a New York State census. Since 1855, New York had done a census on the fives, whereas federal is on the zeros. So 1925, there's going to be a New York State census, and she is going to be in charge of it. Okay, and they appropriate over $1 million to run the New York State census. I should figure out what that is in today's. Oh, wait a minute, I did figure it out. That's about $16 million in today's money. So she had a nice budget to work with. Very nice. Okay, now she's just making a name for herself. There's Governor Al Smith, and she just is over in Albany and just carrying on like any good Secretary of State would. And, the next election, Alfred E. Smith, she also administers, there she is, administering that. And getting her picture in the paper with Charles Lindbergh. There she is. There's Lucky Lindy. Well, you know, things didn't go so well. That $1 million, I think it went right to her. It either went right to her head or right to her pocket. All right, you want to know what the charges are? And it goes on forever. She padded her expenses. Okay. She signed and cashed paychecks of others. She was found burning documents. She traveled at state expense for personal travel. She had fake names on the payroll. She falsified vouchers. She put her relatives on the payroll. And she had 37 expense accounts. Boy, I'm telling you. Yep. So she faces prosecution. Yep. And she was hauled into court and went on trial. Let's see. Remember she was the dean of the home economics at SU. Well, she resigned from that. And she was convicted of, larceny, census fund larceny. I guess all that stuff that she did equals larceny. And they were thinking about what to do with her. But she got a 30-day sentence. She went to jail for 1 month. Now, by this time, this is 1928. It took a toll on her. Getting caught, I guess, didn't set well with her. And she was not well. She did go to jail for 1 month. She lived until, I think, 1949, and she is buried in Oakwood, and she has this little, what it says, Florence E.S. Knapp, 1875 to 1949. She had such a wonderful legacy, and then she blew it, literally blew it. And the state investigating all this, doing the prosecution and whatnot, if you do any census or genealogy, 1925 was the last time New York State did an off-year census. They said that's enough of that, and that was the end of the census there.
Is she buried with her husband?
I believe she is. The Mr. Knapp. Mr. Knapp's taking a nap too. All right, that's my usual pose, leaning on a stump. Okay, who am I going to talk about? Oh, Nelson Gilbert. Yeah, he's a Civil War veteran, and 1821 to 1908. He was wounded at Chancellorsville, wounded at Gettysburg, and wait a minute. This is what I was going to show you. Notice right here, his hat. I'm going to show you an enlargement. 149. He was in the 149th, 4th Onondaga Regiment, and there's a white star, the Corps emblem. All right, so this is in 1841. This is from the Syracuse papers. In 1841, a terrible accident occurred. It was the gunpowder explosion. I don't know if any of you remember that? No, you weren't around then. Okay, and it took place down on these streets. I don't know, the only street I recognize is Willow Street, I think, and Lodi is along there or something. Anyway, there's an intersection. The canals are there. I think I don't, do I have a better picture of that? Yeah, it's right along there. Anyway, the gunpowder explosion was, there was this shop, a carpenter shop, you know, a nice little business, 1841, nothing fancy, and there was a storage shed behind it. Well, there got to be a fire going in the shop, and you know, fires were so common back then, everything was made of wood. So the firemen, you know, they come running with their equipment and whatnot, and they get to the fire and they're starting, you know, trying to put it out. What they didn't know, that in the storage shed there were 26 kegs of gunpowder stored illegally. Nobody knew. And when that gunpowder went off, they said you could hear it like 20 miles away. You could hear the explosion. So the firemen that were there trying to put out the fire, they were badly injured and killed and thrown into the canal. The people who came to watch, you know, people come to watch fires, you know, they were thrown and hurt and injured. And one of the kids that was injured was Mr. Gilbert, Nelson Gilbert. Oops, let me see. Okay, so there's the Oswego Canal coming into the Erie Canal, and it's right down in that area that it happened. And he was the last survivor of that gunpowder explosion, sole survivor of those injured. And yeah, and then when he died, that was you know, the headline of his obituary, that he was the final survivor of 1841. And finally, they put up an historic marker of the gunpowder blast. 25 killed outright and 64 injured in the city's deadliest accident. So yeah, that was pretty bad. The last survivor. Okay, let's keep walking. Okay, we're getting near the end. Okay, that's okay. Hang on. Now, James Jameson was in the Civil War. You notice what regiment? Company H, 54th Massachusetts Infantry. And he has no headstone. He's a veteran, a war veteran, no headstone. 1837 to 1924. You know, I was so excited when I found out that he was in the Massachusetts regiment. You know, I thought, wow, the headline, he's the oldest barber in Syracuse. You know, he was celebrating his birthday, his 80th birthday. That's what they remember him for, being, you know, the oldest barber. Well, anyway, okay, that was the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, there's a better copy of it. In 1863, January, black men were allowed to enlist in the Union Army in the Civil War. Prior to that, they really weren't in the Army. Now they could, in 1863, they could have regiments. And in Massachusetts, they had the 54th Regiment, and it was located, I don't know if it says there, it says on the next one, they would recruit the black men to come and enlist Reedville, just outside of Boston. And James Jameson, who lived in Syracuse and was a barber, went over to Reedville in Massachusetts and enlisted in that 54th Massachusetts. And by the way, he probably got $100 bounty for doing that. And the colonel of that regiment was Robert Gould Shaw. The officers would be white, and the enlisted and corporals and privates would be the black soldiers. Now, his paperwork, Jameson tells that he was 24 years old, 5 foot 4 inches tall, complexion was light, eyes brown, hair black. Says he was born in Ithaca. Yeah, I don't know about that. Occupation, barber. So that's his service record. But his service to his country was at the Battle of Fort Wagner down in South Carolina, when Robert Gould Shaw led his men against the Confederate fortifications. And there's Fort Sumter, there's Charleston. It was just out on the entrance to Charleston Bay, and out here, out in this area. Fort Sumter's right in the middle, and Charleston is over here. So that's where they are. Now, what they had to do to get to that fort, they had to go along the beach, and they had to, really compress their ranks and head for that wall of that fort. And the 72 were killed, 165 were wounded, 30 were taken prisoner, and they had about 600 men to start with. The story of the assault on Fort Wagner, of course, was made into a movie, Glory. And if you haven't seen that movie, that is an excellent, David can attest to that. That was an excellent, excellent movie. Yeah, and up in Boston, there is a memorial, the Robert Gould Shaw Memorial, and I don't know, I like to think that maybe one of these soldiers, going along is James Jameson in that most famous regiment. Well, we got to get back to the chapel and close this up. But just along the way, just notice, how pretty this cemetery is. There's some of the dogwood in the spring, just beautiful. So I think I've told you everything I have to tell you. So that would be the end of this program. Okay. Do you have any questions? I guess not, so I'm going home.
Any questions? Well, thank you very much.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I'm working on number 4. Working on number 4.
Let us know when it's done.
Oh,
When it's ready.
absolutely.
Watch Ed's PAC-B website for other videos.
Where is it?
Campaign.
PAC-B website. It's our logo.
I'm on TV?
We need to make you the copy. Go to the website.